Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Cubist. My name is Bill Corey. I am the Cubist, and I am flying solo at the moment tonight. Tonight, we are going to do a little bit of a review-palooza. So, fun fact, you will notice that this is labeled episode 101. And strictly speaking, it is episode 101. Last week's episode was episode 90, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, was episode 99.5, because we are trying to put together something really amazing for our celebration of 100 episodes here on YouTube. The fun part about it is that it turns out it's really hard to get all 5 of us to show up at the same time because we all lead very busy and interesting lives. So we really want to make sure that we get everybody on the 100th celebration episode. So this is not that episode. Turnout. We are going to get other members of the Cubist crew in here over the span of the evening, I suspect. We basically just have folks that haven't been able to get to their computers yet. So we've got folks coming in a little bit later. Good evening, Tom. How are you? So tonight is going to be a little bit of a solo review palooza and just kind of chatting with the chat room until more members of the crew get here. So bear with me. I'm going to fly a little solo. Good evening. How's it going? So kind of hang in there. Feel free to ask lots of questions or pick my brain about whatever you want. But in the meanwhile, review palooza time. So I am going to talk about a lot of games that I have been getting played lately. And I'm going to start with one that I have been overdue to review for a long time, and I feel really bad about it. And that is Now Boarding from Fowers Games. And look, I'm actually getting smart and bringing the games that I'm about to talk into the, I think I should call this the cubicle. I don't know. Anyway. I was the Spellweaver. Tom, there's your answer. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Now Boarding, this is, in the interest of full disclosure, this was a review copy provided to me by Powers Games. This is a real-time cooperative game about routing planes from airport to airport and delivering passengers in a timely fashion. It is real time in that you have to play the game under an egg timer. And basically the idea is that between rounds, you're allowed to communicate as much as you want and plan and whatever. But then when the actual, hello, Matt, how are you? When at some point the players are going to decide, hey, we're ready. We have a plan in place. It's time to enact it. And then you'll say ready, set, go, and you have, I believe it's 10 seconds to get stuff done. And what you are doing during that 10 seconds is physically moving your plane pawn from city to city and putting down, picking up passengers and moving them here and so on and so forth. And then between there, you can also upgrade your plane so that way it can either hold more passengers or move farther per movement, so on and so forth. And you're using the money that you have earned from delivering other passengers in order to do the upgrades to make it better, easier to do future rounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Rinse and repeat. You have to basically get through the entire deck without having too much unhappiness, which is basically passengers that can't get where they're going fast enough. And at the end of the game, once you've dealt with all of the passengers, you have you get extra unhappiness. Hey, oh, hello, Patrick. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm in San Francisco. Look who I have with me.
Hi, Netters. What's going on?
How you doing?
I am well. How are you?
Great.
Pretty good.
Awesome. Are you wearing your Cubist shirt? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
There it is. There it is. Represent. I like it. Very good. Patrick, it's funny, by the way, sorry, we're on a sidetrack here. Patrick is the member of the crew that was least likely to be here. Straight up told me he wasn't going to make the show, and then of course is the first one to show up. Nice job.
Oh, okay. Well, we're waiting in line for some ramen, so we just thought we'd say hi.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You probably can't see the chat. Tom wants to know if you made it through Chicago unscathed.
The family did, yes.
The family did.
I flew to San Francisco and left my family to drive through Chicago.
You're a smart man. There you go. Anytime you can get in a plane instead. Yeah, totally. That's amazing. Very cool.
Have fun.
Well, enjoy your ramen, you two. We love you both very much. We'll miss you, and we will see you for hopefully next week's show if we can manage it.
We'll be back. See ya.
Bye.
Peace out. Be good. Bye. Awesome. Let's see. There you go. It's awesome. We get moments like that. That's very cool. Yeah, Patrick really has been all over the place for work lately and vacation, and he was on a cruise and all kinds of fun stuff. So anyway, back to Now Boarding. Sorry. Not sorry. It's always a pleasure to talk to them. So back to Now Boarding. I wanted to really, really like this game because I really like real-time co-ops. There are a number of them that have been in some of my all-time favorite games. Space Alert has been a perennial favorite of mine. XCOM, the board game, I've sung the praises of multiple times. I really enjoyed Flatline when it first came out. There are a lot of games that meet that criteria of real-time co-op that I have always really enjoyed. And this one, for some reason, kind of fell flat. And I think part of it is twofold. Number one, it is a small footprint game on the table, which is not a bad thing, right? There's just not a ton of stuff on the table, but that also means there isn't a lot of room to operate. So when you start the egg timer and you say go, and then you have 10 seconds to play your cards and whatever, you have multiple hands that are sort of reaching into one very small area of the table. And I know that that sounds nitpicky and weird, but it just made for a slightly awkward game. Like, one of the things that works really well about, we will start with, let's say, Space Alert, because it's sort of the classic real-time co-op. It's probably one of the first ones now that I think about it. Anyway, the reason that Space Alert works so well, I think, is because not only is everybody functioning under the same time pressure, but everybody has their own tableau and they have to communicate with other players to make sure that everybody's on the same page, but they don't have to physically interact in real time with the components. And so you're talking and communicating, or at least not simultaneously. And so it ends up just kind of working out in a way that feels smooth once everybody is up and running. Now Boarding never feels smooth. And maybe that is a feature and not a bug. I don't know. Maybe that's what Tim was going for when he designed the game. But for me personally, it ended up feeling very frustrating while we were playing, where it was like, especially as somebody that I don't know. I get really self-conscious about moving pieces. So I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea. Yeah, Tom, you're not wrong. Space Alert and XCOM and most of these other real-time co-op games, I do have a good time pushing them through my DJ equipment and making them a little bit of a spectacle. I've done it a couple of times with a couple different games, actually. I think I ran XCOM. Yeah, I ran XCOM, the board game, at a gaming hoopla a couple of years ago, and I've done Space Alert before that too. So yeah, for sure. I'm sure that that's part of it too, is that I want, whenever there's a real-time aspect, I want there to be a really cool immersive experience. And Now Boarding, even though it feels like it should have been because it's everybody scrambling, it was just a weird confluence of too little game on the table combined with too much frenzy. And what ended up happening is a couple of the players really were sort of found themselves almost cheating because they were frustrated that they couldn't get a chance to get to the components that they wanted to manipulate. They wanted to be in there and doing stuff, but because they could not physically get their hands there, it didn't work. So for me, Now Boarding, there is nothing wrong with the game, by the way. I think it was just more, I think it's more just something where I don't love it. But everybody else at the table had an okay time. This gets a solid play it for me. I think it's fine. I think that if you get a chance to play it, you should absolutely give it a shot. I love the art style, by the way. The entire game has this sort of vaguely retro art style, which I really dig. And so I like, it's very pretty on the table. Everything works really well. I like the upgrade system. Like, I like everything about how the game works physically, except for I wish it was in a little bit bigger box. But then again, if it was in a bigger box, number one, it wouldn't be a Powers game, because Powers games always seem to be in oddly shaped boxes for what the game is. Looking at you, Burgle Bros. And also, I mean, I don't know that you could charge. Like, I feel like there would be a backlash if you tried to charge, let's say, 40 or 50 bucks or whatever for this game. Sorry, I'm going to scoot over a little bit here. There we go. So I don't know. It's not bad. It's fine. And I didn't hate it. It was just a little bit not perfect. I don't know. There are other games that fill that niche better for me. So, okay. Yeah. So Holding On, The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr, we talked about that on the show when we had Anthony Ricano from, oh God, and I'm not going to come up with the, what is the name of his new companies? I always think of him as Cardboard. I'm glad I was on the show, having done so. And I really want to find Hex 60. There you go. Hexagram 63. Thank you. Yeah, the Cardboard Jungle part I couldn't come up with Hexagram 63. There it is. So yeah, anyway, so that is Now Boarding from Powers Games. I feel bad because it took me way too long to do this review. Part of the problem is that it was hard to get a group together that was interested in playing a real-time co-op for me. Real-time co-ops are not something that most of my group are particularly interested in, so I struggled to get it to the table. But I have gotten it to the table a few times now. Played, I don't know, I'm going to say 6 or 7 rounds of it total across maybe 5 or 6 players. And it just fell a little bit flat. It's not bad. It's fine. And I think the issues that I had with the game are maybe more personal to me than it was. Can I start over? Hi, Nathan. How's it going? No, I'm probably not going to start over, but I will sum up. Now Boarding from Powers Games to me is fine, but there are other games that do what it does better. I think maybe other people will enjoy it more than I will. So it gets a weak play it from me. I think it's a play it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. There are a couple typos, by the way, and we're going to get to how much typos make me crazy in a little while. I promise we'll get there. So, all right. Next up, I want to talk about Assembly. This is a very small solo game that I got. This is from, what is it, Ren Games, if I recall correctly? Yep, Ren Games. Okay, which I believe by Janice and Stu Turner. This is a game where, okay, the theme of the game is very simple. You are trapped on a space station whose primary purpose in life is to create spaceships. It is a spaceship factory. And then a disease breaks out and something goes wrong. The computer locks down the station with you stuck on it. And yeah, you probably can, Matt. And your job is to escape the station before time runs out. And you will do that. You basically build a tableau of 12 randomized cards, which are the 12 parts of every ship, apparently. And then there are 12 modules. And basically what you have to do is the modules are represented by wooden discs, and you have to get each wooden disc onto its assigned card. And the way that you do that is by playing a card that either swaps the position of 2 discs, rotates all of the discs one or 2 steps clockwise or counterclockwise, puts more discs into play. You start with only 1 disc put into play in a random position. And you determine those random positions, by the way, with a 12-sided die. And it literally gives you a 12, 3, 6, and 9 cards. Or if you went big, I did not, by the way. And we'll talk about that in a minute. If you went big on the Kickstarter, you might get a playmat that has them permanently printed on it. But otherwise, they give you cards, and you basically build a clock layout. And whenever it's time to put a new token on the map, you roll the 12-sided die, and that tells you where it goes. And if there is something already there, you go to the next space clockwise, yada, yada, yada. You basically get 3 trips through a very small deck of cards. And for the record, I am only going to be talking about solo play of this particular game because I have not played it at 2 players. It is a 1 or 2 player only game. I bought it specifically as a solo game, and that is the only thing I can speak to on it. But when you play a card, you enact it, yada, yada. And then every time you go through the deck, 2 things happen. Number 1, you get another card, so the deck gets a little bit bigger, giving you another option. And number 2, everything that you have not locked down yet gets randomized. So you basically you're running against the clock until the deck runs out, and then it randomizes and you might have to start over. But if you have locked things into position before that deck runs out, it doesn't get randomized. And your goal is to get all 12 of them locked into position. And then, like a lot of these cooperative games, it feels like Hanabi started this, and then it's happened many times recently since then. It has a point system, basically. So you win, i.e. escape the station, if you get 24 or more points, which means you locked all 12 modules. You're allergic to wood. You're allergic to a lot of things, Chad. How are you? Sorry, but since I'm solo, I'm going to be drinking a little bit here because I'm talking a lot. Anyway, when you play 2-player, there is this weird mechanic that I read about in the rule book, and I haven't played with it, that you have to confirm the ability to play any given card by the other player at the table having the same card as you or something to that nature. And I do not have any clue how that would play. I just know that, like I said, it wasn't for me. One of my guiding criteria as of late, and this is my tastes are changing in this, is that if I'm going to play a solo game, and it's funny that I say this because I'm going to be talking about another game that I have only gotten to try solo so far, that is not intended as such. We'll come back to that. Teasers. When I think about a solo game, I want the game to either be very easy to set up and tear down, meaning it has to be fast to get up and to the table. If it's a game where I have to sit and mess around trying to set up a whole bunch of pieces in order to get the game played, I have to really like it for that to happen. Now, the good news is I've got a few of them that I do really like, but most of the time that's because I have invested in a custom insert that speeds up that solo setup. Otherwise, it has to be quick. The good news about assembly is that it is quick. It does a really good job of getting the game onto the table and played reasonably quickly, which is what I'm looking for. It has a nice small form factor. Obviously, this is a small card game size box. Everything fits into here, including the expansion that you're delivered with. I have not played with the expansion. I can't speak to that yet. But I have played it numerous times on the base game. I haven't even played with any of the dialed up difficulties because there are so many characters and whatever to get through. And I'm going to come back, by the way, I'm not ignoring you, Tom. I'll come back to Gloomhaven in a minute because I do want to talk about that as well. But this one really did a great job for me of capturing the feel of almost like a classic solitaire game, but giving you more interesting decisions and looking pretty good on the table. I really like this game. I was very excited to get this Kickstarter because I knew that I was looking for a quick setup, tear down. I'm going to end up doing a lot more traveling in 2019 for my work. And I like to have a couple small games that I can bring with me. So that way I've got something to play in the hotel. And I think assembly is a hit. Like, I really genuinely like this. Now, I find it interesting that it is not particularly, and I'm going to pull it up right here, it's not rated really well on BGG right now. It has a 7.6 average rating, but it doesn't have a lot of ratings, which makes perfect sense because it is a very small print run game. I think it's basically only the Kickstarter folks have just gotten it, and so it hasn't been out for a very long time. It's got 207 owners, yada yada yada. So I really like, only 55 ratings. I really like it. I think that if you want a good solo puzzly type experience that is portable and gives you enough to think about, where it feels like your decision tree is interesting and not overwhelming, but fun, this is a good one. It's also very, very replayable. One of the nice things about it is that it does, like, they tell you that it's an addictive game, but of course they tell you that. Publishers always talk up their own games, right? I mean, that's sort of what they have to do. We've talked about this on the show. You gotta be able to push your own product. And they called it addictive, but they were 100% right. Like, the games take BGG says it takes 10 to 20 minutes playing time. I'd say that's about right for a solo game. But then again, I tend to play a little bit slower when I'm playing solo. I don't want to hustle through the games. I want the setup to go fast, but I don't care if the play does too much. But yeah, I found myself wanting to play it over and over again, and I really like it. I probably got like 9 or 10 solo plays in at this point. And again, I'm still playing at the easiest complexity level because I, at the time wanted something easy and I didn't want to reset things. It's real good. I like it a lot. So I'm going to give Assembly from Ren Games a buy it. I think that this is a good one. I don't know how easy or hard it's going to get. Right now, there is exactly one copy on the Geek Market and no copies available anywhere else, but I'm sure you will be able to buy it from Ren Games sometime in the future. So that is Assembly by Janice and Stu Turner from Ren Games. Good stuff. We're calling it a buy it, by the way. Backed it on my own. I'm going to start saying that every time I do a review because I think that it seems to me that more transparency and people talking about how these games came into reviewers' collections is kind of a big deal. So I'm going to try and focus more on that. Call me out. If you catch me not talking about that, please do. So, all right. So let's talk about Gloomhaven real fast. Tom, I think you were probably making a joke about how Gloomhaven is sort of the opposite of what I'm talking about for solo play. And for the record, you are 100% correct. Patrick and I discussed this a number of episodes ago about how he had bought it specifically for solo play and he had left it set up on a table. And I don't remember how much farther he got. I think I remember him saying after that he had basically stopped playing it entirely. I have been fortunate enough to get a regular group that has been playing Gloomhaven with me. As a matter of fact, we had a Gloomhaven day today. And this one is a real struggle for me. Everybody says that they want their co-ops to be hard, right? You want your co-ops to be tough, but winnable. And somewhere along the way, Gloomhaven went from being tough, but winnable to being, we're getting massacred every time we play. And we think, and we're not 100% sure, and I say we because I'm talking about all of us in the group that are playing. We think that the reason for that is because we have characters that leveled up fast enough that the scenario levels are creeping up faster than we are actually getting powerful. So what I mean by that is the way that Gloomhaven works is you take the average party level and then divide it by 2, and that determines how tough all the monsters are in any given scenario. The theory being that way that every scenario will provide a little bit of a challenge. And the rulebook specifically says that's the recommended difficulty, but you can set it to any difficulty you want. You'll just get less goodies, basically less loot and whatever. I am dubious on how they decided that is the recommended difficulty level. Let's just put it that way. Right now, all of the characters in the party are level 4 or 5. We're still pretty early in the campaign. We have to answer your question quickly, Tom, we have a Brute, a Spellweaver, a Tinkerer, and a Mind Thief are our 4 characters. I am playing the Spellweaver. I am the highest level character in the group by a long shot because the Spellweaver's deck is very prone to giving them lots of experience points. I'm not exactly sure why. The Brute is the lowest level, and then the Mind Thief is pretty high, and so on and so forth. It is, for some reason, the game is really ramping up faster than we are. And it's not because I have to assume, I guess I should say, that it's not because we are getting worse at the game, because that does not, we are all reasonably seasoned gamers who have gotten pretty good at our characters. We have gotten a rhythm for how to play people. And it just feels like the game is ramping up faster than we are. And we found ourselves, we set up a scenario today that we played, one of the side scenarios, and we dialed down the difficulty 1 tick from the straight rules as written, the way you're supposed to determine the difficulty would have made it difficulty 3, and we dialed it down to 2, and we still TPK'd. We still got wiped, and there was not very much in the way of discernible bad luck at the table. It was more just, we were like, how can anybody ever win this? And we came close-ish through some really strong luck at the end, but barring, the swinginess of the luck of flipping cards, it just felt really tough. So, and we're trying to get through specific things because we want to unlock more characters. We're trying to retire 1 or 2 characters here, and we, and we, by the way, are playing with a number of house rules to make the game slightly more interesting for us. And we're going to do a whole episode on house rules somewhere in the next few weeks because I think that they're fascinating, and I like talking about how they get created or refined in game groups. But let's suffice it to say that we have taken Gloomhaven and made it ours in a couple really important ways. And part of it is from stuff that we found out on BGG from reading forums and whatever. We talked a little bit about, we did a bunch of reading on what groups were tending to do in order to make the game make more sense. Like, here's a great example. We play where if you summon something, you get to actually control it. It doesn't follow the monster AI. And the reason we did that is because summon things tend to die so fast once you, like, the summon things that we are able to summon are so weak compared to all the monsters that are hitting the table, that if the summon thing even lives until it gets a chance to take an action, it's a tiny miracle anyway. And if it does, then it's annoying that then you don't even get to control the thing that you wasted half of last turn's action creating. So that we have jazzed that up a little bit. We've done a couple of tweaks. Like, again, we'll talk about that later. My point is, Gloomhaven is getting frustrating, and it's making me sad because we really want to experience the story, and we are absolutely stuck right now. The last 3 scenarios we've played, we've gotten TPK'd. Like, we've gotten just wiped. This one was the closest, and I was the last character standing and ended up dying in the last room. And I mean, we milked the Spellweaver has a card that lets you get back all of the cards from their lost pile. We milked that card. And even the Tinkerer has a card that lets any one character go get a card from their lost pile. So the Spellweaver can use the lost card to go get the rest of their lost cards. Then that card goes into the lost pile, and then the Tinkerer gives them that card back so they can cycle their deck 3 times. We did all of that stuff, and we still wiped in the last room. So I really like the game. I'm still really enjoying it, mostly because the people that I'm playing it with are a lot of fun, and we just have a good time. But the difficulty level is starting to get frustrating. And I feel like you're going to get regular Gloomhaven updates now for a while on the show, just because it's a thing that we're playing regularly. So, yeah, no, and we know that. We know, Tom in the chat says you're not required to play the same characters in any given game. You can start a new character from any of the unlock. Yeah, you're right. And of course you're right. But here's the problem. You work so hard to advance these characters. You want to be able to use the cool abilities you have and have the extra hit points and all that fun stuff. How much fun? It doesn't feel like it is fun or in the spirit of the game to stop playing this character or that character. Yeah, and you're not wrong. If it's really about the story, that allows the story to continue. We may end up having to do that, or we might end up just artificially dropping the challenge level down in order to make the scenarios more playable. We haven't quite decided yet. But yeah, you're right. We absolutely can do that. It just doesn't feel like that's what we don't feel like that's what we want to do as a group. It feels like it will suck some of the fun of the game out for us, and I don't know. Anybody for the record, if you are watching after the fact, leave a comment on the video itself here on YouTube, right down there, on what your experience with Gloomhaven has been, if you played it so far. And I would love to pick your brain on this. Gloomhaven feels like a game that can almost merit a deep dive episode. We've been thinking about getting back to those anyway, and Gloomhaven would be an awesome choice for that. The only reason we have not done it up until this point is because currently I'm the only person in the Cubist crew that has been playing it regularly, I believe. I don't think anybody else, except maybe Patrick, has played it a lot. And some of us haven't played it at all. So it makes it a hard episode to plan for. But I think that we might get there at some point in time. So, all right. Next up, I want to talk about an older game, and I don't have the correct box, so I'm going to just pull up the rule book, and I'll explain that in a second. I want to talk about, and now I'm going to fumble because I was not prepared. Revolver 2, Last Stand at Malpaso. This is from Mark Chaplin and Lee Capel. Oh, I'm so bad at games. I'm so bad at names. I wish I had our official mispronouncer of names with us. This is a 2-player exclusive game from Stronghold where one player is the guardians of Malpaso, a city, and the other character is the bandit, basically the bandits, the bad guys, the General Mapache and his group of terrible banditos trying to take over the town. And the way the game works, if you haven't played Revolver 1, which had 1 million expansions or whatever, Revolver 2 is a standalone separate game using very similar mechanics. And basically how the game works is you will build a timeline of 6 location cards. And there is a time marker that will march down the track formed by those location cards. And on any given turn, you can play cards at the battlefield. Each of those 6 cards is called a battlefield. Each battlefield is where you can play cards, and you're trying to have greater or less strength. And if the bandits, the bad guys, have greater strength, they get to kill one of the guardian characters. And the guardian has a whole bunch of character cards in front of them, which are sort of, hit points. And the longer the battle stays in any given battlefield, the more people, at least in the first half, the more people the Guardians player can recruit. So has more casualties that are there to be taken. And when most of the Guardian character cards die, they'll have some sort of an effect. Most of those effects are negative. Some of them are positive. And the basic idea of the game is the Guardian character needs to outlast the bandits character. You either have to outlast them by making it through to the end of the timeline and surviving with at least one character, or by getting the Mexican army to arrive. And that is a whole separate little mini game off to the side where there are 12 Mexican army tokens and that start out on a card, and every turn, or if you take actions to remove them, if all 12 of those tokens can be removed from the card, there we go, that's what I was trying to say, then the Guardians player wins also. So the Guardians player has 2 victory conditions. Number 1, get rid of all the Mexican army tokens, or number 2, outlast the entirety of the timeline. The banditos, I guess, their victory condition is to eliminate all the Guardians. And if they can kill all of the Guardians at any point in time, they win the game. It is an asymmetrical game. Each side has a unique deck, and the mechanics are very simple once you get used to it. The Guardians player always plays first, and they prepare their defenses, and every turn is sort of the same. You draw 2 cards, then play as many cards as you want. Cards might have a cost. That cost is usually in other cards. So if a card has a cost of 1, you will have to discard a different card from your hand in order to put it into play. Not all cards have that cost, of course. And some of the really powerful cards will cost more than 1. And both sides share that same mechanic. And so it's draw 2, play as much as you want, declare end of your turn, draw 2, play as much as you want, rinse and repeat. At the beginning, before every Guardian turn, the Guardian player can choose or manages the timeline, and you go 1 space. If that new space has brackets, you can choose to skip it. So you can sort of rush through the timeline as the Guardians, or you can milk it. If you've got a good defensive position, you can stay there for a couple turns to recruit more Guardians. And then at the end of the Bandito's turn, if they have a greater strength at any given location, get to kill a Guardian. So the game is very asymmetric. I've owned this game for a few years. And the reason why I said I don't have the box is because it comes in a metal tin, and I hate metal tins. They make me crazy. So I removed it from the metal tin and put it in one of these wonderful like pencil boxes I bought at Walmart for like $1, because these stack, and there's enough stuff in here that I can't put it in like a quiver or whatever. There's just kind of too much nonsense to put in a quiver because of all the Mexican tokens and all the Mexican army tokens. I mean, but it is an excellent asymmetrical 2-player game that I do not think gets nearly enough love. It is very, I think, thematic. It very much feels like a Western, right? You know, you've got the noble guardians that are just trying to hold down the town while the evil banditos are just wrecking them and coming at them with wave after wave of bad guys. It does all of those things that you want from an epic Western game. There are special mechanics at a couple locations, like there's a bridge location, and the good guys can blow the bridge when there's lots of bad guys on it. So the bad guys know that, so they're kind of hesitant on how much they're going to commit there. And then there's a last stand at the abandoned silver mine where the good guys can again blow the tunnels to kill bunches of banditos, but the banditos have a Gatling gun and they can just really crank through and murder people real fast there. It does a lot of things. There's a tiny little like weird poker tournament at the beginning of the game, which is basically almost like a very glorified rock, paper, scissors. And if you win that poker game at the beginning of the game, then you'll get better location cards for your side. So one set of locations is good for the Guardians, one's good for the Banditos. So there's some variability on the startup. It just works really, really well. And it is cheap. It is very cheap. Right now, as of, let's see, what is it? Monday. It is Monday, January 21st, 2019. It's $10 on Amazon. $10. This is a strong buy it. If you have a 2-player gaming situation on the reg and you like thematic games that have interesting asymmetrical head-to-head feel, does not stay its welcome, eminently replayable, lots of stuff to go on, multiple strategies for both sides, you absolutely can play this game differently every time you play. Your starting hand of cards will push you in one direction or the other. You will probably see most of the cards in your deck. The cards are very thematic. Everything about this game really works, and it makes me a little bit sad. Hell, there is a copy currently on the geek market for $4. I don't understand why this game didn't get more love, except for the fact that it came out in 2012 and maybe is a little bit of a forgotten gem, but I think this game deserves way more love for what it is than it's getting. So this is a strong buy it for me, if for no other reason than the fact that it is very affordable and gives a pretty compelling 2-player gaming experience. Strong buy. That is Revolver 2 from Mark Chaplin and Lee Capel. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Revolver 2, Last Stand at Malpaso. Gets a buy it from Bill. It's good stuff. All right, I want to talk now. I'm just hustling through this. See, I told you it was going to be a Review-Palooza. I'm doing good. How am I doing good? I want to talk about Deep Space D6 from Tau Leader Games. This was a print and play on BGG back, let's see, when did it originally come out? 2015, okay? And they did a reprint on Kickstarter that I just got fairly recently. Patrick talked about this on the show a few weeks ago because he had a chance to play around with it. I have now had a chance to play my copy a bunch, and so I wanted to talk about it here. This is the best way to describe it is a dice allocation game. You have a hand of dice, and those dice are sort of crew members that you can place in different places on your ship mat in order to perform different actions. And that might be doing damage to external threats, i.e. cards that are flipped from the hazard deck that are going to mess with you. And your ship has hull and shields and hull. Once the shields are depleted, it starts to damage the hull. Once the hull is all the way depleted, you lose the game. And all you have to do is survive the deck. When I was talking about assembly before, I said that I wanted my solo games to be easy to set up and very portable. Deep Space D6 comes very, very close to being that, and I don't hate it. I'm glad I have it. Assembly wins this head-to-head. If we head-to-head the two games, I think I like Assembly slightly more just because it is faster and less lucky. Like Assembly feels controllable. Deep Space D6 feels like you're sort of at the mercy of the dice. If you roll badly, you're going to lose. And there's no not very much luck mitigation, at least not from my experience. And now, to be fair, this is a first impression only. I've only played it, I want to say 3 times now. I've got 3 games under my belt, and I lost all 3 of them handily from dice. And I don't mind that, but and it's not like setup and retrying is particularly difficult, but and this was something that I had a problem with hostage negotiator, but when I owned that game, which I liked, and I ended up gifting to somebody that I knew would like it more than I did. I don't mind losing a solo game, and I don't even mind losing it through luck every once in a while. But if a solo game is too lucky, it gets frustrating for me. And as anybody that's gamed with me in the past knows, I don't mind some luck in my games. Tom, as a matter of fact, is very personally aware of how much I don't mind throwing a bunch of dice when I'm playing a game. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Ha ha ha. That's an Eclipse reference, Tom, just in case. Mark off. Everybody drink if you are, and we'll come back to that joke in a second. But this one felt a little bit too lucky. I don't hate it. I'm still glad I own it, and it definitely scratches a particular itch. It will probably go with me on my business trips, because sometimes it's fun to just huck a bunch of dice around. But it's not as good as Assembly. Assembly is definitely going to be higher on my priority list, which makes me sad, because I really wanted to love Deep Space D6, and I still don't hate it. I just don't like it nearly as much as I like the Assembly, to me. But it's good. It's fine. Here's the problem with it. In my rating system, which is buy it, play it, forget it, or burn it, this is a solo only game. So play it almost doesn't work, right? Because you're never going to play this with somebody else. You kind of have to own the game in order to be able to play it. But I would struggle to recommend this. I don't know. You're going to know if luck in a solo game bothers you. And if that is the case, then you might want to pass on Deep Space D6, because it'll probably make you crazy, because it's dice. I mean, it's a dice game. It's named appropriately. It's a game about dice. It just felt a little bit too random for me. And like I said, I don't mind randomness. This one just hits that button a little bit harder. However, it is enjoyable, and I don't hate it. So I guess it gets a play it, even though that is not the most useful rating in the context of the Cubist and how we rate games on the show, because maybe it's a borrow it. I don't know. Can we throw that in there? You know what? I can throw that in there. It's my show, damn it. So we'll call it a borrow it. Deep Space D6 is fine. Maybe try it first before you buy it. Try it before you buy it. I don't know. Whatever. Deep Space D6 is fine. Tony did a good job on creating the experience that he enjoyed, and a lot of people really like this game. It might just be me. It maybe is just a little bit. Now, I will say this: if you like it, or if what I have said sounds fun to you, you're going to get a lot of replayability out of this, especially the new version, because not only do you have the game, but you get like 4 different ships that you can play, and each ship makes the dice work differently. So then you can, once you've got one ship really handled, you can switch to a different ship, and then all the dice spaces will mean different things. So there's a ton of replayability in that box. Plus, there's like boss cards that you can put in and then there's the new version came with a second boss set, like a little mini expansion that came along with it. So there is a ton of game in this box. Like I don't, like I said, I'm happy I have it. I just don't know. I think you're going to know if it's for you or not for you based on this description. So it falls, I suppose, in the middle of my scale, and it's pretty good. All right. I want to talk about CO2. This is CO2. Sorry, I'm leaning away. This is the biggest box, so it took me a second to get. This is CO2, Second Chance. Vital Lacerda. I always say his name wrong, and I was really hoping Paul would be here tonight to talk about this one, because Paul's was the lead developer on this here game. This is the second edition of Lacerda's game from, I want to say, 2012, 13. I'm going to get that wrong. re-implements this. I'm looking it up because this is what I do. It's super compelling YouTube, you guys. This is the version that I have is a fully cooperative game about providing sustainable energy to the world before carbon emissions get out of control. If you are a climate change denier, first off, I think you're silly because it means you don't listen to scientists, and I don't care if that offends you because I think it's ridiculous to not pay attention to experts, but I don't care. Yeah, 2012. I was right. Holy cow. I'm never right about that kind of stuff. It is 100% cooperative. There is let me rephrase. The game is definitely pushing you to play cooperatively in the box, but there is also the competitive game, which is how the first version was. The first version was strictly competitive. This one is co-op and competitive and solo. And so there's sort of 3 play modes in the game. But the basic idea of the game is it is a Lacerda action selection game, and it feels I would argue it definitely feels like Vital Lacerda is starting to get a vibe similar to Stefan Feld and Uwe Rosenberg and Reiner Knizia, where you can tell that you're playing that, they're starting to get an identity, maybe a feel. And I think that this one slots nicely into that field. Now, to be in the interest of full disclosure, this is a first impression of the game. I have only played one solo game, and it didn't even play the full game. I got enough, and then I ran out of time and ended up having to pick it up because we had a Gloomhaven day today. So this is 100% a first impression. Okay. So I'm not going to rate this game as far as purchasability goes. I'm going to be talking about the components in the box, the gameplay as such as I experienced it. The idea behind the game is that you have a main action and you have executive actions. The main action is going to be doing something about bringing a sustainable power source to one of the continents on the map. The executive actions are ways for you to play cards, lobbyist cards out of your hand, or move your scientist pawns around, or deal with carbon emission permits, which are sort of this weird currency that exists alongside money. The board and the bits are gorgeous. I'm just going to lead there. Ian O'Toole did a lot of the art here, along with Palma Simonetti and Giacomo Tapiner. I'm terrible. Man, do I miss Patrick and his official mispronouncer of names. It is a beautiful game once it's set up. It is a huge game as it's set up because the board is a 2x3. Meaning it's a 6-fold board, or a 4. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's got 6 sections. So it's a very long board with a lot of stuff that needs to be piled up along those sides. So you better have a pretty long table to set this one up, or be prepared to have bits tokens or bits trays all over the place here. It is really interesting. And again, I've only played it solo and not a whole game, so I'm not going to give you a super in-depth thing, but the basic idea is that your main action, you're either going to propose a clean energy project, you're going to lay the infrastructure on an already proposed infrastructure project, or you are going to build on an infrastructure that has already been laid down. So there's sort of every power plant requires 3 phases in order to get put onto the map. And each of those phases gives a bonus to the person that does it. The person that proposes the project will get a one-time bonus when they put the tile down. The person that lays down the infrastructure is sort of taking ownership of the project, and the person that does the building of the project will earn the most points. And those points are sort of your metric on whether the group is going to win or lose. Basically, the way that you lose in this game is if you ever drop below 0 victory points, or if you drop to 0 victory points or below, I don't remember, then the group loses. Or if carbon emissions get above, I believe it's 500 parts per million by the end of any turn. And if you don't provide enough clean energy, the continents will start to create their own dirty energy coal plants. So you're basically trying to keep every continent happy and provide them with the energy that they need, and making decisions on which one you're going to have to let go at any given moment, which ones you're going to have to replace, which ones you can deal with it here or there. You also need to take control of the energy of the energy of a given continent. So there's sort of a weird kind of area majority thing there, but it's a cooperative game, so it doesn't like area majority is the wrong term, but I don't know how else to describe it. Basically, if you're the player that has provided the most clean power to a continent, you get to spend that continent's carbon emission permits. But again, only in a competitive game would that be something you'd be fighting over. I don't know. It's a unique beast that is gorgeous on the table. Having said that, there are 3 spelling errors on the frickin' box. I get that that box does not impact the playability of the game or the quality of the game. But when I do not think it is an overreaction to be upset when you spend a bunch of money on a box, and then if somebody comes over and like that is being a bad ambassador to the industry, in my humble opinion. I think it's dumb. How can you be a board game publisher and not be able to spell the word knowledge or competitive or markers? All 3 of those words are spelled wrong on the box. That's dumb. Rulebook is fine. Some of the cards are printed upside down, which is weird. And the custom insert that came with the box doesn't fit some of the pieces where it's clearly meant to go. There is a quality assurance issue here. And a bunch of people told me, knowledgeable folks that pay attention to the industry, told me after I pointed it out that the company that did this particular print, Giocchix, Giocchix, an Italian company, is known for having production issues. I get it. And I'm not saying that the game is unplayable. I'm going to tell you right now, I already adore it, but I'm mad that we have yet another very visible reminder that editors and proofreaders are not being brought in on these projects. We are paying a lot of money per game for a luxury product. And I'll straight up say it. Yes, it's a luxury product. Absolutely. Everything in this hobby is, okay? And these are not needs. Like nobody needs to own any of the games that we talk about on this show or on any podcast. You never need to own it. But I am annoyed that there are competent, trained editors and proofreaders out there that are willing to work for reasonable prices and for some reason aren't getting work. And you know what? If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that speak my mind. I try to speak my mind very plainly. And here, we'll give you a peek behind the curtain a little bit. I can see how many people are watching the show at any given moment when we're doing this live stream. And during my little rant here over the last few minutes about the typos on the box, we've lost a few viewers, and that's okay. It happens. Some people don't want to hear me complain about stuff. I get it. I am not complaining about this particular game because I'm mad that I spent $75 on a box that has misprints on it. I am complaining about this game because to me, errors like this are indicative of how taken for granted the concept of editing and quality assurance is sometimes. Knowledgeable folks told me that I should have realized that Giocchix, I don't know how to pronounce their name. I feel bad for mispronouncing it. I don't mean to cast aspersions on them. I should have known that I was going to get bad production. But how can we expect to continue to bring new people into this hobby when we have inside baseball conversations like that happening? Every time something like this happens, it's a black eye on the hobby as a whole. Oh, got it. Okay, cool. Oh, that's fine, Tom. Sorry. Just pay an editor. This is already a luxury product. I am already spending a large amount of money on these games per game compared to, and I'm not saying an unreasonable amount. Okay. I mean, I definitely remember when $50 was the standard for a good game, and now it's creeping up more and more and more. And, $100 games are not all that uncommon nowadays. And I get it. And it's, but I'm saying right now, maybe I'm only one, and I would be interested to hear this as well. If you're watching this and you feel like commenting on the YouTube video or on, if you want to email the Cubist podcast at gmail.com or whatever it is. I want to know what you think about this. Personally, I would be very happy if the price of every game went up $5 a game in order to help pay for good editing. I'm just to that point. I'm annoyed with it every single time, not because I am Mr. Perfect man that never makes mistakes, not because I don't understand how an Italian publisher is printing in a non-native language and therefore has, there's a language barrier there. I get it. I understand all of those things, and I am not unsympathetic. However, I think that we have gotten to the maturity, like our industry, our little cottage industry, seems like over the last 20 years, it should have matured enough that we need to pay editors, real editors who are doing a real job and run spell check in the language in which they are proficient with. Just hire a proofreader, pay somebody a couple $100, to proof your stuff and look at it. No one that has looked at that box, and I've showed it to a few people. I posted a picture of it on Twitter last week, and I showed it to a couple flesh and blood human beings at my house, and nobody looked at that box for longer than 5 seconds without going, wait, they spelled competitive wrong? Ugh. And it's in huge bold. I'm going to show it. Not from a shame standpoint, but because you should see it. There it is. Cooperative and competitive game modes. It's a great game. I'm really happy I have it. I am very, very excited to play 100% cooperative Euro game with a cool, interesting theme that I think is very relevant in 2019. And I love everything about it. The production value inside the box. I'm going to disagree with Matt in the chat a little bit here. It doesn't bother me. The card quality, I didn't find it particularly egregious. I thought it was fine. Maybe it wasn't what was advertised in the Kickstarter. I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't think about that a whole lot. The quality of components I don't think about unless it's real bad, and I didn't find them bad. It didn't bother me. Maybe it was just individual preferences, no idea. But I thought everything in the box, the infrastructure and power plant tokens are gorgeous. Big chunky pieces of wood. Like I said, the art's amazing. Everything about the game, I think, inside the box is wonderful. I didn't even really have a problem with the rule book. I think the rule book itself, I think maybe I found one spelling error in the rule book, but I didn't find any misprints. There are way worse examples of how bad this can be from a rule book and graphic design standpoint, and I don't have any problems with that. I'm just irritated. Tom, I have a pro Travis and Paul bias on the subject. I pay $5 per game just to know either one of them looked at it. Paul did look at it, to be fair. Paul Incow was the lead developer on the game. He was very intimately involved with the game, but proofreading isn't the developer's job. That's different. Developing a game is about developing the gameplay and polishing the game itself, not the spell check. So and this is going to sound like I'm backpedaling because we like Paul. I like Paul a lot. Paul's on the show almost every week. He's not here this week, which makes me sad. But I like Paul a lot. I'm talking about your Dustin Schwartz and your Travis Hill and all of the people that, William Niebling is a personal friend of mine. He's an editor. There are paid editors out there that this is their job. Give them work. Like I cannot speak for everybody, but I would rather spend $5 extra per game to make sure that I don't have things that are just egregious like that happen. I want the quality of games across the board to continue climbing, and this feels like a big step back, and it makes me sad because I have a feeling this is going to end up being one of my favorite Lacerda games. I really like the theme. I really like the fact that it's 100% cooperative, so everybody's working together. It has all of the earmarks of a game I'm really going to dig. Replayability for days because you randomize which continents want which kinds of energy and which goals have to be met. And the UN wants different things every turn, and you can play it solo, and then you can play competitively if you want to. Everything about this game screams this might be my favorite Lacerda, but I don't know. Maybe I'm all wet. If you think I'm all wet, that's cool. I'm good. This is not curmudgeon Bill. This is Bill wants to be able to share more games with people. And when I pull out a box and I say, this game is brilliant, and somebody looks at it and they say competitive. Now, having said that, Stronghold is publishing this game in 2 months. And I have been assured that Stronghold has taken note of the spelling errors and is fixing them. So good. The Stronghold version in a couple months, I think, is going to be awesome. I think that people that backed it on Kickstarter are going to be sad when the Stronghold version comes out, and it is probably going to be a similar-ish price to what we paid on Kickstarter and won't have all of those black eyes. I'm still happy I have it, but it annoys me, and I feel like it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And it's not just Kickstarter backer whining, okay? I was a couple people with very interesting and strong opinions chided me a little bit, saying that this was not a big deal and this should not be talked about. My point isn't complaining about CO2 Second Chance by GeoChicks in 2019. My point is saying that as an industry, I think we need to do better. And I just want to see us do better, because I love sharing this hobby with people, and I want to be able to do it without having them look at me and give me some pretty heinous side eye because they're looking at it and I'm telling them that this is an amazing game. And they're like, yeah, but they can't even spell competitive. I just want us to get better. That's all it is. So, but I'm happy I have it. I'm really excited to play it more. It does some really interesting things. The flow of play is actually pretty smart once you figure out how things work. And I don't think the learning curve is even going to be too particularly rough on this one. It's a little bit different than it feels like most games where you're sort of building and building go, because every building is in 3 phases. So it feels a little bit like the flow of the game is going to be a little bit different from what most games that people are used to playing. But I think that's a feature, not a bug. I think that this game is going to do a lot of really interesting stuff that I'm really excited about. By the way, in an effort to head off criticisms that I have heard elsewhere, yes, I am aware that Wingspan from Stonemaier Games has typos on it and was a big issue too. I guess I'm holding Jamie Stegmaier to the same metric here. Like, we got to do better. Now, Jamie has come out publicly and said that he's going to address the issues. I don't know exactly how. I haven't kept up on that because I don't own Wingspan. It's not something that I have felt compelled to dig really deeply into, but I just want us to do better. And so let's do better. That's all it is. I want all of these games to be more accessible, and part of accessibility is giving people a good first impression, and spelling errors on the box don't do that. High Frontier 3rd edition, what I couldn't shut up about a year and a half ago when I got that, or whatever, 2 years ago, whenever it was. Same problem. You can't spell the game designer's name wrong. That's ridiculous. You got to get the stuff right, folks. You just got to do it. So I don't know. I'm not a publisher either, right? Like, I'm just coming at this. I'm just an end user. That's all I've ever been. And that's all I'm going to be, probably. So, like, I get it. You know, I definitely don't know what it's like to be a game publisher, but I do know what it's like to be somebody that spends a bunch of money on a game and enjoys showing games to more people. And I think that these are valid concerns that need to be voiced from a place of care, right? Like, this is not just a bitch fest. This is not, the intention of this is not just for me to sit here and rant. It's a call to action. Let's all get better. Let's get better at having healthy dialogue about these things. Let's get better about doing our due diligence. Let's just get better. And we are getting better, right? This is still, it's kind of hard to remember that this is a pretty nascent industry, right? Like, we're 25 years really into the curve of hobby board games. That's pretty young. Now, I mean, granted, it's 25 years, but we're still working out the kinks, and the way that the industry has exploded over the arc of the Kickstarter era of board games means that you're going to have more stuff like this. I just want to address the concern. So I will say that I really cannot wait for Stronghold's version to come out. And by the time Stronghold's version comes out, I am positive I will have gotten to this game to the table multiple times, and I'll be able to speak on it again. So I will rate this game again once Stronghold releases their version, and then I'll be able to talk about the gameplay, and we'll talk about the differences between the two. So there you go. CO2 by Vital Lacerda. Paul, if you're watching this in the future, we love you. And I really am excited to get the game to the table more often. I just wish the box sucked less. All right. Well, thank you for hanging out with me on this solo Review-Palooza. I hope that I kept it pretty entertaining. Episode 100, we're going to do them out of order because we're weird and we do what we want on this. I don't know. We're going to do a fun thing. We've got some stuff in the works. We're just trying to get as many human beings around our microphones as we can all at the same time so we can celebrate episode 100 of the Cubist the way that we want to do it. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for watching for 101 plus episodes, not counting the unscripteds and all that other fun stuff. We really appreciate everybody. If you want, please feel free to give us all the feedback in the world you want in the comments below. Constructive criticism is always welcome. Being a jerk isn't. I'm just going to start saying that every week. If you feel like financially supporting the show, there is merch. If you go to thecubistpodcast.com and look at the shop, link at the top of it, you can find our merch there. If you feel like buying some, you can also support us directly. There are links to both there's links to the Pod Pledge page at the bottom in the description of this video on YouTube. If you feel like giving us a couple bucks a month or a one-time donation or whatever works, offsetting the costs of hosting all this fun stuff is always welcome. The Cubist is a proud member of Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table. Go to punchboardmedia.com if you would like to see lots of other great content. In the meanwhile, thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. I hope everybody had a good time. Thanks, chat room, for hanging out. Always appreciate you being here. A little bit of a quieter night tonight, but I promise we'll make up for it when the eventual episode 100 celebration happens. So thanks for hanging out. Have a great day of gaming, everybody, and we will catch you all next week. Take care. See ya.